So first question, how important is regulating your mood in a close-knit team environment, and how do you do it?
I'll start since I'm the young one here that's still learning that, and then he can kind of teach me. For me, my attitude and my mental state of mind is so important in a team aspect because um, the relationship and how everyone's feeling dictates a lot of the success that I'm able to go have. For instance, I'm playing on a two-man team, right? And so if my partner is upset with me, or the environment or the situation, or hecklers, guys that are talking trash to him, I think being able to have a great attitude and be in a good mental state of mind is very important, because then I'm able to manage kind of the morale of the team and help deflect distractions and keep everyone focused and compartmentalized on the task at hand that we have to accomplish now, not in the next round or what happened last play. So for me, that's a big part of my success.
And I'll just add that, I mean, the parallels between sports and what we do in space are really remarkable. We are in serious trouble if we're not all working together. And if there's one team member kind of not participating kindly with all the rest, and maybe muting some of their extreme views or anything like that. And we're also in a confined space in space, so it can be really destructive if we're not all together. Having said that, I would say none of us have to work very hard at that, because we all have the same goal in mind. Casey's trying to win games and big medals and big events. We're trying not to do anything really dumb and damage billions of dollars of equipment or get hurt. And so it's really not like it's that much of an effort. But, we all are responsible for being good team members. And the only way we're going to be successful is if we're all working together. And the magic of people working together in harmony is incredible. It's really greater than the sum of each individual part.
Yeah, that's awesome. I feel like winning a game and then protecting $1 billion worth of equipment and saving your life is pretty much, it's like the same parallel there. So we see eye to eye. It's perfect.
It's all, Casey, I come from a sports background, and the parallels are amazing. I mean, it's really all about, this meticulous preparation, working together, getting together as a team. And, a lot of the things we do are kind of like ballets or sporting events. It's so articulately planned ahead of time.
Yeah. That is cool. That's rad.
Jumping off of that, what are some of your recommendations on how to be an effective leader, and how has that advice changed over the years?
Yeah, I'll just start off with that. I have found that being really accessible and transparent and personal is really what makes a really effective leader. In the business world, we talk about management by walking around, making sure that the people see you, and that you are able to connect with them really almost on a friend basis. And so really being present and and transparent. Even if you have bad news, all the research shows that if you have bad news to deliver to the team, it's best that you tell them exactly what it is and why you're taking actions, rather than trying to sugarcoat it. So I like being, very transparent and accessible as a leader. And I think that's been welcomed. And I know that when I have leaders, I'm just so thankful when they're both, interested in what I'm doing, accessible and transparent.
Yeah.
Casey, what do you think?
Yeah, in the world of sport, and then as a father of 4 children, I think navigating leadership translates kind of almost seamlessly through those two things. Playing and managing a team and your partner's morale and the mentality of the team together, because you're always constantly fine-tuning things to get as close to perfection as possible. We know that doesn't exist, but there's always like a focus that we can have to get there. And then coming home and having to shift and then have a separate but similar leadership mentality around developing my children and helping them understand that I care about them and that I'm not upset about what happened at practice, and trying to like separate the two, and then going into coaching, and then showing up and coaching all different levels from professionals to children at a young age as well. And I think leadership as a whole is such an important role that we play when it comes to success, because it's also seen in so many different ways. Success for me is, all right, we picked a specific skill today, or a topic to hyper focus on, whether we win or lose during these drills or games or matches. Because if we have, then that's the level of success I want us to focus on. You know, we're improving in these small ways that in the long run are going to be epic for us as a family, as a coach, and as a player. And so for me, that leadership ability and learning and growing myself as well has been something that is very important to my daily routine and well-being.
Casey, thank you for mentioning that. It reminded me that I read a book a long time ago by Ken Blanchard, and it was called Leadership by the Book. And it really was talking about being a servant leader. And so that's kind of the role I've tried to take as a family member, as a leader in the family and in business. It's making sure that the people know that you have their back. And it's true, of course, in sports too.
Yeah, I would agree with that 100%. That's something that I know when I've had leaders or coaches that have led with service and have been able to navigate it in that direction, that I immediately connect with them quicker, and I'm able to be a little bit more vulnerable to learn a new skill and not worry about my outcome all the time. And if is coach watching, because I know there's that trust level. That's really cool. I need to read that. I have to look that up.
The next question is going to be based around nutrition. So presumably both of you are in, jobs where nutrition is important. So in a high pressure situation, what role does nutrition and your nutrition help support your performance or morale?
Well, I'm sure mine's not going to be as intense if I'm not performing as well. But I think for me, nutrition in my performance is, to be honest, it takes up the majority of my ability to be successful and win, because I've got to be firing on all cylinders. I've got to be optimal in my mindset. It needs to be clear. My body, I'm trying to get to the point where I feel as fluid and explosive, but yet patient at the same time when I'm competing. And so nutrition and what I'm putting into my body, that fuel, that helps me get to that outcome so much faster and more consistently. And I think that's one of the hardest things, is consistently, okay, how do I get to that like feeling where, when you do win a championship and everything aligned, like I got to find that as much as possible. And for me, especially with an autoimmune disease and not being able to have so many things in the majority of our diets, I've had to be even more specific and, fine tuning those things that I'm able to put in my body. And so when I find it, it's a very exciting thing for me. So personally, if I don't win, I don't make money, I don't provide for my family, I don't get sponsors, or not all these things. If I'm not currently winning, a lot of these things don't happen for me. And so that all starts with my nutrition and my training. So for me, it's very important. Yeah.
I had a coach tell me when I was very young to treat my body like a temple. And that is that everything goes into our body to provide nutrition should be well thought out. And it doesn't mean that, you have to have a really strict diet and you can't have ice cream and all things like that, but it's a balance. And so thinking of your body as a temple is really what I tell people to think about when they're thinking about nutrition. And for us, of course, when we go into space, it's critical, because when you get into space, zero gravity really messes up the body, the fluids shift around, and you actually change the taste buds in your tongue actually change. So you start changing the foods that you flavor. So you have to really remind yourself that if something doesn't taste good, to eat something of equivalent value. We also tend not to want to drink a lot in space because, again, the receptors in our body are changing somehow. And so we actually have to force ourselves to continually hydrate in space. But in any case, treating your body like a temple is really kind of that key attribute.
So I have a quick question around the types of foods that, Steve, you brought up when you're in space, not being able to, or not drinking a lot of water, presumably, or any other things to hydrate you. Or Casey, I'm sure during matches and high intensity things like that, you absolutely need to be hydrating and drinking water. What types of foods and drinks, I guess, do both of you consume during your respective activities?
Yeah. Oh, it's a lot of things. I feel like having access to things that are, I hate to say, but quick and easy in a way, which have been packaged that way, seem to be the easiest for me. Because let's say we have a timeout and we're in 100-degree weather in Florida and the humidity is almost at 102, and I've already played a few matches, so you're probably already dehydrated. And so being able to get nutrients to your body quickly, and then also have it be, easy to have and quick, are two of the kind of main things for me, besides, just drinking water, because at that point, water's not going to work well enough for me. So I've got to have food and specific things that can immediately infuse my body with energy and nutrition, so that I can keep that engine moving. So for me, it's like applesauce packs. It's snack brand spirulina with nuts and berries and blueberry, like things like that, and banana. And so all those little things I can eat quickly in like a timeout that I have maybe 30 seconds. For me, stuff like that is the best thing, because I can get right back out and I don't feel heavy and groggy, and I don't feel like I'm dizzy because I ate too much, but I feel focused. And so for me, that's huge, with being able to eat quickly and efficiently, I would have to say. At least in my world, I have such a limited amount of time to like hurry and get back on the court.
Yeah, well, before we go into space, we have tasting sessions where we taste all the different foods that are available, and we actually score each one. So you might say, spaghetti is a 9, and cauliflower is a 3, or whatever.
That's awesome.
And then we put our menus together, and then they look at them from a health perspective. I actually have a couple of the old reports here, and it always says, add more vegetables. So you add more vegetables. But in any case, if it's not time critical in space, you can just take your time and think about trying to eat a well-balanced meal. I was raised in California. I'm an athlete, environmentally conscious. So I try not to eat too much meat. I love fish. I do eat chicken too, but we try to avoid some other meats. So that's kind of another thing that guided what I took into space. Anytime I need a quick nutrition, I always try and eat something that's unprocessed. So for example, nuts or fruits. And in space, we can take nuts in their natural form. Fruits usually has to be dry fruit, which is fine, of course, too. And again, it kind of gets back to that treating your body like a temple, just trying to, when I do need energy, trying to get away from anything that's super duper processed.
Do you guys have a lot of, sorry to ask, do you guys have a lot of gut issues when you're in space because of the way you're eating the food and the transition your body's making in the zero gravity, environment? I'm guessing that's probably, it takes a toll if you're not super strict on like almost time-wise how you implement the certain foods that you guys bring out with you. Like at first you can have a little bit heavier meal, and then the longer you're out there, I'm guessing it's got to be a little bit more fine-tuned, a little bit more high nutrient, so I can not have to eat as much. I'm curious if that is like a routine that you guys have. Is that something that you guys do?
Yeah, so when they pick the meal before the flight, they also realize we're going to be in zero gravity. So they do increase certain vitamins, for example, and certain values of content, because when you're in space, you don't get a lot of exercise, right? You're just, you can go all day with getting no exercise because you just, touch a wall and you fly across the room, pick something up that's 500 pounds with 2 fingers and just move it like this. We do have to force ourselves to exercise. The people on the space station work out 1 to 1.5 hours per day, every single day on these special machines we have in space. But in terms of food, they'll add, calcium, because, for example, our bones can become more brittle in space. Iron is another thing they add, a little bit extra than we would have on Earth. A couple of things, though, are interesting about the body in space. The first thing is that it's designed, of course, to operate in 1 gravity here on Earth. When you take gravity away, it is not happy. Everything's kind of floating around in your body. All the organs are moving around. Your stomach's kind of gurgling. And of course, critically, the fluid in your ears is completely messed up because it's floating around those 3 canals, and instead of kind of being used to 1 gravity. And so nausea is very common. I would say 60 to 70% of the astronauts get sick in space. It only lasts for a day or 2, but vomiting, frankly, is pretty common. I threw up on my first flight, 93 minutes into the first flight, and I threw up on my 4 flights probably 100 times. So it's not the most fun thing. So your body just freaks out for a while. Most people do get better either naturally or with a little bit of medicine. In terms of eating in space, I was always thought, isn't gravity required to send food down into your stomach? And it turns out it's not. So we can eat in space normally. The food does kind of touch the top of your mouth sometimes, which you're not used to here on Earth. But in the end, it's just muscles that are kind of moving it down into your stomach, which was kind of fascinating. And so that's why, you can turn completely upside down and, eat with someone while you're upside down. Both of you are doing just fine. So.
Oh, that's cool.
What common attributes do you think exist for astronauts and performance athletes?
I would say, I'd say I'll just go first and kind of explain what I would envision or think the commonalities are when it comes to the attributes. I feel like you're a very high functioning, focused person on a specific thing that you're passionate about, because I think both are very, very hard to do. And unless it almost borders the line between your full passion and the thing that you love doing, and then also your job, I feel like they have to be almost the same thing to really, really devote your life to it. Because for me, if it wasn't something that I did when I didn't have to compete, I'll go to the beach and play for fun when I'm not competing. You would think, well, don't you play all the time? You want to go do that now? No, it's because I'm obsessed with it and it makes me happy, so I have fun doing it. And so there's this world where I'm constantly trying to navigate fun, getting better, a little bit too obsessed with it, and then watching other people do it and love developing other people. So I feel like there's a commonality in in my mind, to be an astronaut, I can't even imagine all of the things that you have to go through. I hated school, and I feel like volleyball was my outlet from okay, if I can just get really good at this, when I'm done with school, I can just go do that forever. In my mind, of course, as a young athlete. So to be an astronaut and to constantly be studying and learning and growing in so many in my mind scientific and specific mathematical ways, because that is how you do everything. And if you're off a little bit, it's a big deal. So for me, I feel like you have to have this passion and obsession, and they have to kind of align with each other almost to be successful in those two worlds.
I think both athletes and astronauts are going to be on stage, and there's going to be people watching them. They're both doing something they love. They're both doing something that they really want to be good at. Not pretty good, but they want to be perfect at it. And so they really are forward thinking in terms of what are all the things that can happen in sports. What's the other team going to do? What are the conditions going to be? What is the exact place I need to get to? The same thing before we go into space. We're thinking, okay, what are the 10,000 things that can happen when we're going into space? And so what we do is we meticulously prepare. We are obsessed with preparation, being in good physical condition, thinking about how we're going to work as a team, practice, practice, practice. And for that reason, although the question was about how astronauts and athletes are the same, it's really for anybody achieving something that wants to achieve something, no matter what it is. We really are kind of forward thinking all the things that I need to do to get to that place and setting the bar. What is it that I actually want to do when I get there? Because, I think a really good definition of success is doing the most with what you have. And so if in a race that, the absolute best your body can do is 40 seconds, then that's success for you. For an Olympian, it might be 25 seconds. And it doesn't matter. You're just trying to find what's best for you. And so, having actually been a collegiate athlete and then an astronaut, the parallels were amazing. And in fact, I tell many people that I learned all of life's important lessons in my youth sports experiences in terms of, looking forward and preparing.
Yeah, that's true. It's incredible. Thinking about it, all the preparation for me, and I'm guessing, a lot of that for you as well, is that when I go and compete, I'm almost on vacation in a way. I get to relax and just do my thing, where all the preparation leading up and the obsession and fine tuning everything and training, that's the hardest part.
Yeah. I did a speech actually at 3:30 in the morning this morning, virtual speech for a group in Europe. And after I did the speech, we always have a question and answer period. Someone said, aren't you scared? How do you concentrate when you're going 8 times the speed of a bullet and you're 400 miles above the earth? And I had to think about it. And, I was always trained that when someone asks a question, to not try and come up with an answer that's, it might be appropriate, just tell them the truth. And the truth I recall now is that, when I'm flying and I'm actually performing the task at the hand, I'm having a great time and I'm not even having to think about it. And the reason is because I've done it before. And so, for young people, I tell them, when you learn to drive, like you've got like both hands on the wheel and you're like really scared, stop at the stop sign and you're looking around, man, when you're, 25, 35, 40, 60, you don't even think about it. It's because you've done it so many times. And so I totally understand your point where you're like in the moment, it's fun. If you're nervous, that's okay. That just means you care, right?
Yeah. That's so good.
Okay, so is there anything that Steve or Casey you want to ask each other?
I would love to ask Casey about being an elite professional athlete. When I go speak to schools, I often ask the young kids, what do they want to be when they grow up? And a ton of them want to be athletes, right? Because they see so many great role models out there. And I'd be curious, as a professional athlete, how do you deal with losses that are so significant and perhaps maybe even caused by mistakes that you made? What do you do that first hour after that match and the next day?
Yeah, that's a great question because it's evolved throughout my career. I think when I was younger and working my way up to the professional rankings and wanting to get on that tour and wanting to go play in the Olympics and like having this big dream, I think I put everything I had emotionally, physically, everything, and winning was like the only result for all that work and all of those feelings. And then so early on in my career, that hour after was just, if I won, it was amazing. If I lost, it was just so much pent up anger, frustration, sadness, and just wanting to reverse time and start over and understanding what I did wrong and just being so mad that I did that I would just walk away. I would just go hide. I would just go hide wherever I could go hide and just be by myself. And just because I didn't want anyone around me, I didn't want to say something I was going to regret because I was so upset about it. And I really didn't know how to navigate those feelings. I didn't know how to address it and how it would linger sometimes for days too. And I think later on in my career, I was able to separate the emotional distress that it would have given me because I had understood immediately things that I know I could have changed or I should have done. And I accepted them as just things I could have changed. And I always looked at, well, hey, let's just make sure we don't do the same thing next time. Let's not keep doing what they say the definition of insanity is, right? Just doing the same thing and expecting a different result. And so, you learn to adapt and to grow. And then I'm able to appreciate the good moments more, and then how to hone my focus into getting better so that when I do lose, I'm able to kind of refresh and hopefully it happens less and less. So I'm able to kind of get the emotion out of it now, where before it just consumed every thought I had. And I think that's something that comes with experience and understanding that, specific moments are very important to learn from versus letting it almost define who you are and feel like there's no hope if you lose. So for me, that's kind of the progression that had happened. And so, now it's much easier to lose, even though I hate it just as much. I'm able to put those emotions in the buckets where they need to go and kind of carry on and then go be dad and not be angry dad. I could go be happy dad that knows that tomorrow at practice, he's going to take care of what he needs to do, and to be present. And I think that's something that's helped a lot, is just being more present after a big loss and understanding that people are coming to watch you. And they always come up and say, hey, good game, and when I was young, I'm like, good game, I just lost and played terrible. What are you talking about? Where now it's like, they just want to talk to you and appreciate whatever you're doing. The reason they're there is because they now have possible goals to come do what you're doing. And so I think I've learned to accept that and be like, oh, thank you. Just let it blow by and thanks. Yeah, next time I won't lose and hopefully you'll be there too.
Yeah. Casey, in your life, you've had, many big moments in sports, but also in other parts of life, and moments when you had a big thing about to happen. And how did you handle nervousness and maybe fear in those moments?
Yeah, I think accepting that it's real and that fear is something that everyone feels was a big part of
Love it. Yeah.
being able to perform or get through those moments that are more difficult. I think for me, a big part of what helped me be successful was when we are about to approach, let's say, in the sporting world, a big match, and you're playing a seed that might be higher, and these guys are on a roll and they're more successful and they've been playing longer, and you kind of have this anxiousness of, oh my gosh, I'm going to play this really, really good team. I hope I can do all these things perfect. And, I think you try to almost block that out. No. Like, I'm going to go and be amazing. And you kind of have this expectation is, okay, I got to play perfect to beat these guys. And I think what I really learned was not to let that expectation consume me if I made one or two errors, because then the whole match was gone. It was accepted. This is going to be an incredible match, and it's going to be a really tough battle. And I'm going to go out and earn every point. And then anything that happens that's a variable I can't control in my advantage, that's like getting a free dessert. But I'm going to go earn everything I can on my own without anything expected that will go my way. And I think accepting that it was going to be hard and I was going to have to work as hard as I could to earn every point prepared me mentally to where if things didn't go my way, it didn't affect me. And it wasn't this emotional roller coaster of trying to get back to where I could be in my flow state and be in that zone where I'm playing well again. And so I think accepting that everyone's a little bit scared, everybody's anxious, and everybody wants to play well. We all want to be successful, but then putting your mind immediately into it's going to be really hard, so be ready to work. Well, then now I'm focused on is the work, not if and what and can it happen. It's just, no, I'm working, and so for me, that helped me a lot.
No, I love that. I love that. Thank you for sharing that, because I think people can use that advice for whatever their thing is in life that makes them nervous. Did you have any, like growing up, just any hero or anyone who was really influential that that affected you in any way towards sports or towards life or anything like that?
Yeah, I think you watch sports on TV, and I grew up during when Michael Jordan was unbelievable, and I actually was only allowed, my parents only got television during the Olympics. And so for me, there's a lot of these Olympians that stand out more for me. So I could never watch TV. And then the Olympics came around. I was like, yes, it's been 2 years. We can watch TV again, and so then you get to go watch, for me, which was the most amazing thing ever. And so what it did is it kind of, for me, it made the Olympics such a special and amazing thing, even more than probably normal, because I had been almost fasted of this television and all these things until the Olympics came around. And so that became like everything to me. And so a lot of those guys that, won medals, didn't win medals, all the stories that they would tell leading up to the events and understanding the background. So for me, it was never like a specific one hero. But then what happened was, for me, that one hero I realized was my dad, because he works construction and he would wake up every day and I barely ever saw him because he was always out late in the shop prepping for the next day. And then he'd be up at like 4 out installing and doing all these things. And I went, wow, my dad, then I started working with him and I could barely hang with him. I couldn't hang. I was, Dad, I'm exhausted. I'm always in the car sleeping. He's driving up, and so for me, that he was my hero, that he could do that with that little sleep. And he just worked so hard that I was like, that's a hero for me, to be able to take care of his family. So for me, it was always my dad. If I could put into one specific person, my dad was absolutely the guy that I looked up to the most.
Oh, fantastic. Well, it's not a surprise that you became a professional, successful, high-level athlete, being an Olympic junkie. I mean, my parents let me watch TV, by the way, all the time, but we weren't just.
Well, you have sugar cereal too.
No, every 2 years, But
Yeah, yeah.
I made scrapbooks of after the Olympics, and I'd cut the newspaper pictures out and put them in the scrapbooks and everything. So we're Olympic junkies too. People will ask us sometimes, hey, in August, you guys want to, go camping on this date? First thing I do is I look if it's an Olympic year. Is it during the Olympics? Because we're not
Yeah,
available.
yeah.
So,
Is it end of July, August? Nope,
yeah,
can't go.
yeah,
Exactly.
So not a
That's
surprise.
funny.
Love the story
Yeah.
about your dad too. When I reflect on my parents who are older than yours, they come from the Depression era, and just how hard they worked was just, just like your dad too, just so impressive, and never complaining. So no victim statements, just work
Yeah.
hard and, and keep moving ahead and being humble about it. And so I really try and encourage young people, especially young athletes, that, when you're in a sport, you do something great, it's okay to celebrate a little bit, but, respect the opponent and just kind of celebrate quietly. And to this day, the athletes that I really admire are the more quiet ones that when they do something great.
I love it. I have a question. I think,
Oh no.
yeah. Well, people ask me a lot of times things that compared to what you've done feel so insignificant. Like, oh, what did it feel like when you won your first professional event? Like, oh, it was so surreal. Other things. What did you feel like with all this preparation, training, when you first are in space? You guys it's hard to even like phrase a question. What did that feel like when you had prepared for such a long time and you're like, you've achieved what you wanted to be, but then you're officially in space? Like, what was that first initial feeling for you?
Yeah, thanks for asking, Casey. So, I was one of these people who knew what I wanted to do early in life. And so I started thinking about flying in space, even as like a 7 or 8-year-old, did drawings about it. And it was crushing that when I got into my 20s, the Air Force rejected me once, and then NASA rejected me 4 times. And so each of these was kind of a gut punch. So I was at 33 when I was selected finally to be an astronaut. So you can imagine on the first flight when I was 35, it was pretty rewarding, pretty exciting, this long 3-decade journey. But, I wanted a career that, helped advance society through research and development. But in the end, I always just wanted to ride a bullet into space. And, that 8.5 minutes where there's massive acceleration, massive vibration. I mean, it's just really cool. And then, to see the Earth from space just kind of is, makes you realize that we live on this fragile, beautiful island that we need to take better care of. And so that was really a great, I think in any endeavor that you search for, that moment that it actually comes true is this incredible kind of spiritual pride, internal pride moment. And so it doesn't really matter what you're doing. One of the interesting things to do is after you do achieve one of your big dreams, then what do you do next? And so for me, after flying in space, it's been enjoyable to try and find what the new thing is, what's going to be the new important thing in my life. Frankly, one of the first is being a good dad and a good husband. Again, being a servant to people as they pursue their dreams. But things like I've turned to like scuba diving and maybe doing more extensive backpacking and things like this to kind of get that somewhat of an adrenaline rush. But in the end, I wanted to ride the bullet.
That's rad.
It was really cool. It was really cool.
That's so cool. That's funny because I didn't win my first world tour event until I was 32. So I was very late in my progression as well. It sounds like in comparison, we're both on that same kind of a late turn path as far as everyone else was winning those things mid-20s. And yeah, it was very similar, a little bit later of a career. That's cool.
Yeah, well, that's perseverance and grit, right? Anytime you have this passion
Yeah.
for a long time, I think people like to call that grit. Well done.
Yeah, same. I love it. That's amazing.